Just to let you know, this webinar will be recorded, and we will be sharing the recording later on our social media channels. So once again, thank you for joining us today from many places around the world. I hope you can see me okay and you can hear me well as well. I also want to let you know that we have disabled the chat option. So those of you who have already sent us questions, thank you for that. We will be answering your questions at the end of the webinar. However, it is not possible to answer every single question as we wouldn't have enough time. Also, some of these questions are very specific to the person's status. So we're going to be answering some questions that are more universal, and hopefully this update is going to give you a lot of information, a lot of updates, and you're going to be able to also have our contact information later on during the webinar. So let me start here. Today, we're going to be talking about one, latest IELTS news, two, the recap of the latest Canadian immigration changes and any news. And as I mentioned, we are going to be answering your questions that we have already received. So let's start. Well, as I mentioned before, I work with IDP IELTS. We are one of the proud co-owners of the test IELTS, alongside with the British Council and Cambridge as well. Well, IELTS, it is the English language testing system, and that's what it stands for. We are accepted by over 10,000 organizations worldwide. We're also accepted by governments of Australia, Canada, New Zealand, and the UK for migration purposes. IELTS is also used by employers, universities, professional registration bodies worldwide in Canada, in the US, and many other countries around the world. IELTS is 30 years old. We turned last year 30 years old, so we have been in the industry for many years, and we know exactly what it's like to be there. So many of you have asked about testing in Canada and testing worldwide. Well, in Canada, regularly, during normal scenario, we have more than 150 test locations across Canada. So you can find them online as well. But since the start of COVID-19, a lot of these locations had to close down for the time being because we weren't able to test. So the good news is now that since many of the provinces here in Canada started to reduce the tighten security measures, we are now open in many of the provinces in Canada. So in Canada, we are open in Ontario, Alberta, British Columbia, Manitoba, Quebec, and Nova Scotia. Worldwide, we are testing right now in 87 countries. So what I would suggest for everyone who is looking to book an IELTS test and has not been able to, is to go to IELTS.org if you are outside of Canada, to look for the place that there is a list of countries that we are open right now. And for Canada, I recommend you go to IELTS.com to look for a place in Canada where you can test as well. Now, since we are, a lot of you are waiting to take the test, I will also recommend that you start practicing. There are many good practice tools that we have online. And again, I invite you to visit IELTS.com to find these resources. But one of them that I want to bring up to you today is the IELTS Progress Check. So the IELTS Progress Check would allow you to test from the comfort of your home. This is a practice test, which is approximately 60 Canadian dollars. And you will be able to receive feedback and an indicative band score of how you are doing. And IELTS examiners will give you information of where you need to improve. So again, this is a practice test. It is not the real test. The real test is taken at the test center once you're able to book it there. Now, from IELTS, as I was mentioning before, we are now open across Canada in many places. So here I'll go again: Ontario, Alberta, British Columbia, Manitoba, Quebec, and Nova Scotia. Many of you may have tried to book right now. However, you may not have been able to, since everything is getting booked pretty quickly. The reason is, as you may imagine, there is a large backlog of tests that people were trying to take since March, and they were not able to take it until right now. So as we continue to open up in many different places, we will be able to increase the number of availability of the test. So hopefully everyone will get a test date very soon. Okay, so these were the IELTS updates, and now I think everyone is waiting for this part, which is the updates from Immigration Canada. And Chris, if you can let me know if you can hear me, you can unmute yourself and you can share your screen.
Yeah, here we are.
Perfect. So I'll pass it on to you, Chris.
Just get my screen up. Yeah. Thank you, Monica. All right. Thanks again. I'm happy to be back. Last time we spoke was a couple of months ago, and there have been a lot of updates since then. Before I really get into them, just a reminder, my name is Christopher Collette. I'm an immigration lawyer. I work at the law firm of Campbell, Cohen. Our website is canadavisa.com. And as you'll see later on in the presentation, we will be answering some general questions, but if you have any case-specific questions, questions that are specific to your situation, we've created a special email address, which is IELTS@canadavisa.com, where you can email us and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Now, jumping right into it, there have been a lot of developments in response to the COVID-19 pandemic in Canada. The last time I did a presentation like this for IDP IELTS, there were some developments, but over the last month or so, there's really been a flurry of new developments affecting all types of immigration applications. The general overall message is that there was a few-month period where processing was extremely restricted, but with these new steps taken by the government, there is a slow and cautious return to normal on the horizon. So I'll just go through some of the more recent developments. Dating back to March of this year, the government implemented some travel restrictions, and the specific instructions have been changing on almost a weekly basis. So I do invite you to visit this link that we've put in. The information I give you today might be out of date by next week, so it would always be important to check back for the latest if you are looking to apply or renew your status in Canada. Now, again, the general rule for the past few months has been there's been an immense slowdown in processing of all types of applications. In response, this is mostly because A, there are staffing reductions at the government offices, and B, a lot of applicants couldn't complete essential steps that were normally required as part of the immigration process. These are, for example, biometrics and medical exams are required, but they've been closed in many countries worldwide. Biometric services are starting to resume abroad. There are visa application centers in many countries which will now take appointments, which is good. There was on pause for a while. But the government has also introduced a new policy where if you are unable to provide your biometrics within the stated deadline, they normally give you 60 or 90 days, they will just hold your application open until you can complete those steps. Also, a development that was announced a couple of months ago is that students in Canada right now, the working restrictions have been somewhat loosened. They can work in essential industries up over and above the usual 20-hour per week mark that they're allowed to do during their studies. These are all the older updates. In terms of some of the newer updates, students is a huge thing right now in Canada. Everybody's wondering whether they're going to be able to travel to Canada for the fall and what they're going to do if that's not possible. And the message Canada is sending right now is that students are definitely still welcome, and it is still recommended that you come and pursue your studies in Canada if that was your goal. In terms of new developments for study permits, it is no longer possible to do these port of entry applications, as they were called. Many visa exempt countries around the world, it used to be possible to simply fly into the country or come to the land border and make your application in person on arrival. Unfortunately, that is no longer possible as long as the pandemic continues. All new study permit applications have to be submitted online at this point. In response to a surge of study permit applications, the government has implemented a new two-step study permit process. So unfortunately, the way things are going, it's probably not going to be possible for the government to approve everyone's study permit for the upcoming fall semester. This is because, again, processing slowdowns and many applicants aren't able to complete some of the application steps that they need to do. So in response to this situation, the government implemented a new two-step process. They will issue, once you submit your study permit application, they will go through most of the essential documents, and if everything looks good, they will issue a first stage approval of your study permit. And that basically allows you to register for your classes and start your studies online if you are unable to travel to Canada right now during the travel restrictions. Later on, once you are able to provide any missing documentation, such as biometrics and medicals, they will then finalize and issue the second stage approval of the study permit. With that said, even those who have approved study permits right now might not be able to travel to Canada. There are some updated rules with respect to coming for studies, and it varies depending on whether you're coming from the United States or from another country. For students coming from the United States, if they have an approved study permit, they might be able to enter Canada regardless of when that study permit was issued. For everybody else, only people who have study permits that were approved before March of this year are currently able to travel. On top of this, as I'll detail in a little bit, not everybody, even if you have your approved study permit, the border officers upon your arrival will still want to make sure that there is a need for you to do in-person classes, or that you, for whatever reason, you cannot complete your studies online. People who are already in Canada studying in earlier 2019 or 2018, they can enter without an issue. With respect to the upcoming semesters, Canada has said that they are looking to process 80,000 study permit applications for the January 2021 semester. And using their new policies, it's looking good that they'll be able to do this. There's also been a really important update with respect to postgraduate work permits. Many people were concerned, if they were unable to travel to Canada, would they still be able to get a postgraduate work permit? The answer is yes. There is a policy now which states that you can start your studies online for the last summer semester and for the upcoming fall semester. And any time you spend studying online will count towards your postgraduate work permit, up to 50% of the program of studies. And there's a new development over the last week or so where you can start your studies online as soon as you've applied for the study permit. You don't even need to have the first or second stage approval. You can start counting that time right away as soon as the application is in the system. So if you have a study permit approved right now, are you able to enter Canada? The border officers and airport authorities will be looking towards the following factors if you are looking to travel to Canada right now. Again, if you've already been living in Canada for a while before the pandemic hit, you should have no issues re-entering Canada because it's considered a non-discretionary visit automatically. For everyone else, though, they'll need to show the border officers or the airport authorities that they can quarantine upon arrival, that they'll be able to begin their studies as soon as the quarantine is done, and that there is a need for an in-person presence in the classrooms, for example, labs and workshops. And even if there is no in-person presence required, you might be able to enter if you can show the authorities that you are unable to do your studies online for example, for internet issues or some other related factors. With respect to work permits, there have also been some new developments. In Canada, people in Canada are now benefiting from much faster processing times overall. There are biometrics exemptions. So again, with most temporary residence applications, people need to provide their biometrics if they haven't done so already. That is currently waived for people who are in Canada and looking for a new temporary permit. There are also special processes right now. If you are on a closed work permit, an employer-specific work permit, and you want to switch employers or start a new job, there's actually a 10-day process right now where you can contact the authorities and request expedited work authorization for your matter. If you are outside of Canada and you are looking to apply for a work permit, it really is on a case-by-case basis right now. It's hard to say how long it will take. In many cases, the government will be prioritizing essential jobs, mainly related to healthcare, essential infrastructure, and other things. If you are looking to come on a work permit that is not related to an essential sector, processing of the application might be delayed significantly. We're seeing some significant delays in this respect. With respect to permanent residents, things are slowly getting back to normal. In terms of the most popular immigration program, which is Express Entry right now, there were fewer visas issued over the past few months, but the numbers are coming back up to normal in the near future. There were some recent draws for Canadian Experience Class applicants in the past few weeks with actually very good scores. So a lot of people who were eligible for that program received invitations. The scores were 445 and 431, I believe. And for the first time since the pandemic began, the authorities did a draw under the Federal Skilled Worker Program. It was on the 8th of July, and a score of 478 was required. And we're expecting that there's going to be additional draws in the near future, hopefully with lower scores as they continue to draw people from the pool of candidates. With respect to family class applications, spousal sponsorships, by and large, business as usual. If you are sponsoring a spouse to Canada, nothing's stopping you from going ahead and submitting that application. Processing might be slightly longer than normal, but otherwise, it's looking like the usual pre-COVID situation. There is also parent and grandparent sponsorships. In case anybody was unaware, they used to do draws once a year for this program and issue invitations to up to 20,000 people to apply to this program. They had to put the draw on hold this year as a result of the pandemic, but every time we speak to the government, they say they are still committed to issuing another round of invitations for the parent and grandparent program by the end of the year. So we'll have updates on that on our news website, which is www.cicnews.com. And for anybody who's applying for permanent residence and already has their application approved and they have their landing papers, there are also some new instructions that are in effect. If you can come to Canada and land, you are permitted to do so, as long as you intend on settling and not leaving the country right away. If you do intend on coming just to activate your permanent residence and then leaving, the advice being given right now is to wait. And even if your landing papers expire, you can contact the authorities and tell them when you're planning on traveling, and you should be able to complete your landing. So that's just a brief summary. I didn't want to take too much time so that we have more time to answer questions, but you have my contact information here on the right. And the email address, like I've said, that we've created for people is IELTS@canadavisa.com. You can contact us if you have any specific questions about your case, and we'll be happy to answer. All right.
That's great. Thank you very much, Chris. That was very informative. That is a lot of information, a lot of updates, a lot of news. And I know it's very overwhelming, you know, when people are trying to go online and, you know, try to see where do I find this information. So having this one-stop shop in a way to have all of this information is very, very important for us. So thank you very much. Really appreciate it. And So as I mentioned, so what we did this time is that we're not opening up the floor for questions at the moment, but we did ask people to send us their questions. And it is not possible to answer every single question, but we've put together a set of questions that hopefully will answer a lot of those inquiries that people had about, the process applications as well for IELTS too. And I really hope that, the presentation that you gave especially have given people the answer that we're looking for. So I'm going to start, if you don't mind, with some IELTS questions, which were not that many compared to the amount of questions we received for immigration. So I'm going to start here. So for IELTS, one of the questions that we had is, my IELTS expired at the beginning of the year. Can they be extended? So we, as IELTS, we have expiry date of any IELTS test scores for 2 years. So if you need to have these scores reissued, usually, if you took your IELTS last year and, you need your IELTS scores to be sent to one of the organizations like a university or to, your employer, then or if you need an extra TRF to send to Immigration Canada, then usually you contact your test center and you ask them for a new TRF. Now, usually you have to pay for this, but if it has been more than 2 years since the moment that you took your IELTS, unfortunately, this cannot happen. And, you will have to take a new IELTS test, unfortunately. So, make sure that you're studying, that you are maybe taking those free or paid IELTS practice test, because the higher a score you have, the better chances you have for Immigration Canada. So that's one of the questions as well. Now, is IELTS indicator good for immigration? So many people did see the news at the beginning of the pandemic that we launched a IELTS indicator, which is a academic online test. So it is only, as I mentioned, academic, so it is not good for immigration. So if you do not need to have an academic test, an IELTS test, please do not book it if you're trying to apply for immigration. Immigration Canada only accepts the TRFs, the IELTS scores that you send to them, and they must be valid. So they cannot be sent from a test center, they cannot be sent from us, it has to be sent by you directly. Is computer delivered IELTS accepted by immigration? So many people are confused between computer delivered IELTS and the online IELTS test that I just mentioned, or online practice test. So when you're booking your test, or when you're looking around and it says computer delivered IELTS, it means that you're gonna go to a test center, you sit down in front of a computer and you write your test on the computer. You have the choice to write the IELTS test on paper or on computer. It can be academic or general. Both are accepted by Immigration Canada, also by universities and colleges. So do not confuse IELTS indicator, which you can take online at home, or a practice test between, the computer delivered IELTS. So computer delivered IELTS at a test center is accepted. Okay, and the last question I have for the IELTS side of things is, I've tried booking my test in Canada for next week, but everything is sold out. When would I be able to book my test? So as you can imagine, there is a big backlog of tests because a lot of people had to wait until the test centers were able to resume opening. We have now opened up in many provinces and also in many countries around the world, making sure that we are following every health and safety procedures that we need to follow in order to make sure that both the staff and candidates are safe and healthy. So right now here in Ontario, I'll give you an example, we have just got into stage 3, which allows to have more people within a test center. But again, we have to take consideration that we are keeping people 2 meters apart as well. So I will say keep checking online. Go to IELTS.com if you want to book, or IELTS.org in order to book a test. You may not find it for next week, but you will find test date later on. So please keep checking. That is the best advice. So now over to you, Chris. I'm going to read you some of the questions that we had, and I'll pass on the microphone. So now that many places across Canada are opening up, is IRCC resuming the processing of applications for students, PRs, grandparents, and what is happening with that overall, Canada and abroad?
Yeah, so very good question. We touched on this a bit during the presentation. Things are getting back to normal. All applications are being processed right now. The issue, though, is that some are taking far longer than others. Again, part of this is due to reduced processing capabilities on the government. Part of this is because many of the required documents are unavailable around the world right now. But by all means, if you are planning to visit, study, work, or apply for permanent residence, you should still pursue your plans and get your application in the system as soon as possible. Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. Now, we have many people who are already in Canada and their visa is about to expire, or they know that they will have to renew it later on, either this year or beginning of next year, and people are very nervous about this. So if they need to renew, is this happening? Do they need any extra requirements? And will they have to go to a border crossing in order to renew their permits?
For most of the in-Canada applications right now, it is still possible to process renewals, and they're actually processing them very quickly right now. I'm assuming that that's because it's difficult to process the out-of-Canada applications for people in Canada. They're already here. So a lot of the verifications that they normally do have already been done. So just as an example, where we used to get postgraduate work permits within about a month or two, they're now being issued within a week or two.
Wow, that's
so,
great
yeah.
news.
Yeah. Now, it really depends which kind of visa you're looking to renew. Study permits, renewable from inside Canada. Most work permits, renewable from inside Canada. No need to go to the border. However, on a question that we often get with respect to postgraduate work permits in particular is, can I extend my postgraduate work permit? And unfortunately, that is still unrenewable at this point. The only way to renew a postgraduate work permit is if your passport expired before your postgraduate work permit was supposed to.
Okay.
We're hoping that the government's going to come up with a policy allowing for extensions or some other relief for postgraduate work permit holders, but we have not heard anything yet. So yeah, if you're in Canada right now, things are very good, very good.
Okay, that's great news, and thank you for that, because I think that was another question that was coming up. Many people saying, I have my postgraduate work permit, can I extend it? So thank you for letting us know, and I'm sure we'll probably have another an update probably in a few weeks, in a month or so, that we'll make sure that everyone knows what's happening with all of this. Now,
if I can just
yes.
add one more point on that. It's also, people might be looking to switch which kind of permits they have from a visitor to a student or whatever. That would be a different scenario, and I would say contact us, because we would need to verify. In some cases, you might need to exit and re-enter the country, and right now that is not possible for most people. So yeah, I would say contact us in those cases.
Yeah, and those are very specific cases, and you and your colleagues, Canada Visa, they're so well known, and you guys know exactly all this information, making sure that from the government directly. This is not information that comes from a Facebook post. It is directly from the source, which is very, very important.
Yeah, we have a whole team dedicated to just these updates. So yeah, we're very up to date.
That's great. Now, many people, it's another question that have many people are looking to Canada to come and study, and they were already starting to plan, but they didn't even start their school application. Is it wise for them to start looking to school for next year and start their application? Or is something that you say, we see that Canada will reduce numbers? What is the scenario looking right now for people, international students who want to come and study in Canada?
I would still recommend apply. Canada loves international students, and they want to do everything that they can to allow them to eventually come to Canada and actually do their studies in person. Like I mentioned before, they're looking to process over 80,000 study permit applications for the coming January 2021 semester. For the fall at this point, it might be too late to get a study permit, the full approval of a study permit, but they do have this new two-step process. So if you do get accepted to a school and you want to start by September, you might be able to get a first stage approval and start your studies online. By and large, though, yes, I would still recommend apply to the schools. The process still works the same. Once you get an acceptance letter and you have the savings, you can apply for the study permit. And the only thing that is unknown at this point is, whether the virus will get better or worse around the world. Obviously, if things do get worse, we'll have to wait and see what happens. But at least in Canada, things are improving remarkably. And we are taking steps to vet anybody who's entering Canada. They have to quarantine, isolate themselves, etc. So if that continues, I am very optimistic for the fall semester, but more so for the January 2021 semester at this point.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much. And one last question that we have here is Canada's management of the pandemic so far has been very efficient, and we've seen that in the news also with the numbers, the opening of the economies in many different provinces, and it's getting noticed abroad. People from around the world, they're saying like, okay, Canada is they know what they're doing, they're handling things, that's what it looks like. And many people are starting to eye Canada as their future home, and they want to migrate here either through studying or express entry. So what should they expect if they wish to start this process? What would you recommend people start looking at, and where should they go to gather this information?
Sure, those are all great questions. I love Canada and I understand the desire to come here. And I do think we are handling the pandemic situation quite well. There's always room for improvement, but overall, as compared to many other countries, we're doing very, very well. Overall, I think everybody's hoping that we will get over this pandemic within the next few months, maybe up to a year. We'll have to see what happens. But it all goes back to, if you have plans to immigrate to Canada, you should still pursue them. And if you are interested in permanent residence, there are over 80 different programs that you might be eligible for. There's programs on the federal level, provinces, Quebec has their own immigration programs. We offer a free assessment on our website. If you would like to be assessed for many of these programs, you can fill in the free assessment. We'll get back to you within a day. We'll let you know what your options are. If you're not eligible for any other programs, you might be interested then in studying, visiting, or working. And again, it might take a bit longer than usual to get those authorizations, but by all means, processing is still continuing. So all the more reason to get your application in the system as soon as possible. And plan ahead. That's what's really important right now, is don't start a week or two before you want to come. You really need to start planning a few months in ahead at this point if you're dedicated to coming to Canada.
Perfect, that's great. One last question that we had is about the VACs, the visa application centers around the world. What's the news about VACs? Is there any website where we can go and check if they're open, if they're not open? Because a lot of people may have already started their applications for either residency or a study permit, and they feel they are up in limbo right now, waiting to see what's going on.
Yeah, so up until I'd say about 2 weeks ago, the vast majority of visa application centers were closed around the world. These were places where people would go to submit their visas, submit their applications, and do their biometrics, perhaps most importantly of all. However, within the last couple of weeks, the status has changed for many of them, and they're now indicating that they are taking appointments for various visa services. You might have to be a bit patient. You might need to wait for an introduction letter from the Canadian Immigration Authorities to be able to visit a VAC. But for example, in France, I think I saw Mexico, in Canada, they're going to be resuming soon. Many countries are starting to resume their biometric services. And there is a dedicated website. I don't have the link on me, but it is an IRCC biometrics website, so you can Google it. And they have all of the VACs around the world listed, and they have all of the statuses for each VAC listed as well. So if you are looking to plan ahead or see if you can go give your biometrics in the near future, I would say visit that website and they'll let you know right away. And you also have the links directly to the VACs if you want to register and then make an appointment with them.
That's great. Thank you so much. And to end, I'm gonna go first, and then I'm gonna ask you to, what is the greatest piece of advice that you can give people right now who are waiting on hold, who are already in the process? So from the IELTS side, I'm gonna say that continue checking online to see when you can have an open test date. And in the meantime, study, practice. Now, if you're able to, if you're at home, if you're in quarantine, or if you are just making sure that you and your family stay safe and you are staying socially isolated, practice. This is the best time for you to be able to have a better score for either immigration or for any academic purposes that you have. So this is the time to do it. If you have the time, just please do it. So that's my my piece of advice. So over to you, Chris.
Yeah, I'd say the golden rule right now, again, is planning ahead. It might take a bit longer to get your plans going and to get the decision you're looking for. But by all means, things are working the way they should, as best they can during the pandemic. So, yep, just stay safe. Whatever you're planning on doing, there's a lot of changes on an almost a daily basis right now with all the policies and the government policies and processing changes and special instructions and new programs being developed. So really important, no matter what you're planning on doing, is to check the official sources for updates every day. And we do have a centralized news site, which I mentioned before. It's cicnews.com. We post updates usually within minutes when they come out. So if you want one centralized location for all immigration updates and what might affect you, you can visit our website. And there's also the Canada Border Services Agency and Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada. They both have dedicated COVID-19 pages right now. So check back, probably the most important thing right now.
Great. Well, Chris, thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for gathering all those updates into one presentation. I can only imagine that you can not only go to one website and gather all that information, but it's a lot of work. So thank you very much again. And thank you everyone who came over today. I know many of you are joining from many parts of the world as well as from Canada. And thank you for waking up early, staying up late, or just making time out of your day to come and talk to us. And stay safe, and we will talk soon.
Yep.
Take care.
Contact us at the email address if you have any specific questions we weren't able to answer today. But thank you for having me, Monica. It was another pleasure.
Thank you. Bye-bye.